Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's September 20th, 2015, and this week we're going to do a lesson covering lead guitar soloing basics. And this week's question was sent in from Chris. He's out in Cardiff, Wales in England, and he wrote in with this email: I have trouble applying scales to use them as a guitar solo. Lead guitar seems to have its roots in the use of scales on the neck, and even though I understand quite a few scale shapes on the guitar, I cannot create good guitar solos. My questions are: how should I practice the minor scale shapes on guitar? And are there common chords used in minor chord progressions for the scales? From Chris in Cardiff, Wales in the UK. Well, thanks for writing in, Chris. The main idea when it comes to learning the basics of using any scale is the combination of familiarity with the scale pattern on the neck and physical technique for being able to play the scale, as well as a relaxed application of, using licks, scale fragments, and melodic phrases. Plus, you're going to want to have a good enough ear for making different types of melody resolutions into different scale notes, like even the chord tones themselves, scale extensions, suspensions, and even alterations. Now, this is obviously a lot of stuff to develop, but I'm going to break it all down into a system that you can start working on to help you learn the basics of lead guitar soloing. Well, in getting started, it's critical that all students who have an interest in guitar soloing go and spend time working out their scale patterns all across the guitar fingerboard. Now, since this lesson is going to place the focus upon the minor tonality, we're going to need to work on two primary fingering patterns for the minor scales, and these patterns are going to be the minor pentatonic as well as natural minor or Aeolian mode. Now, my first example here is going to be the scale of minor pentatonic. It's a 5-tone scale that uses the first minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and the minor seventh of the natural minor scale. So here's how it sets itself up on the 5th position of the guitar neck, key of A. Once that pattern for the minor pentatonic is developed and it starts to feel comfortable on your guitar, you're going to need to spend some time being creative with the shape. You'll need to tap into your intuitive side, get creative and experiment with phrasing and articulation techniques, and just to build your sense of awareness on how to make this scale sound more musical. So the first one I'd like to discuss is sliding. You can slide from above downward, or you can slide ahead into notes. Another one that's really good to work on is bending. So bending ideas, you can see when I'm doing them, I'm pulling at the string or pushing upward on the string, and I'm generally using multiple fingers because you get a little bit more leverage that way. Can also do very nicely in bending notes that are on lower strings downward toward the floor. It's an often overlooked idea. So watch out for those, try and experiment with those ideas. Another important concept to work on is hammering into notes. And also doing pull-offs out of notes. Another really good idea is the aspect of slow and fast vibrato technique. So when you play a note, you can just shake the string against its axis. You can do it slowly, you can do it quickly. It's a bit of an action of bending, but you're rocking the string more than you are just straight bending it. And you can gauge how far you want to go with the vibrato technique. If you can have wide vibrato, smaller, tighter vibrato, they can be faster or it can be slower. So experiment with that stuff, because those are your phrasing devices, and they really will help the music come across a lot more human, than just playing tones and not having any kind of phrasing to them at all. Now, as soon as you start to feel somewhat comfortable with the minor pentatonic, begin learning the layout of the 7-tone natural minor. And this scale is often referred to as the relative minor scale, since it uses the exact same tones that are found in the major scale, but instead plays them around the 6th degree of the major scale itself. So if we were to take a C major scale and count up 6 notes higher, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'd wind up on an A. And the A is what we now focus on as our main tone for the A natural minor scale. So it's basically playing a C major scale, but from the root of A. Here's a popular 5th position, 5th fret pattern starting on the 6th string root of A. Now the next idea that's really important when working on scales has to do with bridging one scale position across over to another scale position. And this technique will involve using segments of 2 or more scale patterns on the neck, and can even involve overlapping multiple patterns that ends up creating fingerings that are very different from the original scale pattern you started with. So the next scale layout I want to run through with you combines some of the notes from the A minor pentatonic scale that we started with at first in the 5th position there, with a new position on the neck. And as you'll recall, we started in 5th position, but this new one we're going to do is going to be up in 7th position. Now with the new scale layout, it's going to use scale tones up to the 10th fret there, as well as some of the previous tones found from the other 5th position layout. So here's how this one sounds. Now this concept is really interesting, helps you create more lateral movement along the neck, and you don't have to stop at pentatonic. This concept can also be done using the natural minor scale as well. Here's a bridge scale pattern shape that operates across the larger range of the fingerboard from the 5th fret down all the way up to the 10th fret. So we're going to start on that A. We're going to include notes in a wider interval, so we're doing all whole steps there. It's a different fingering pattern. Here it is again. Now keep in mind that there could be all kinds of different ways for the scales to sit on the neck, so spending the time to learn lots of scale patterns and to map out shapes for licks and runs is critical for playing well. All right, so now that we've worked out a number of different scale patterns and we've mapped out a few bridged together locations on the neck connecting several places along the fingerboard, it's time to start considering chords and how they can come together as progressions. Now keep in mind that chord progressions will be used to connect all of the melodic ideas to the backing track harmonies, and basic chord knowledge for both major and minor keys is vital information to know and understand. What this comes down to is harmonies. Now, if I'm in the key of A minor, the harmony that's backed up against all that scale is basically going to run in an order and sequence along the key. The first chord is minor, the second chord is diminished, the third chord is major chord, the fourth chord is minor, the fifth chord is minor, the sixth is major, and then the seventh is a major chord. And we come back to the root again, which is minor, of course. Now, that type of system of how the structure of all the chords map out, or what we sometimes refer to as a chord scale going along the key, that information is super important. So you've got to get a handle on how that operates. Now, For our examples, we were pretty much all remaining right in key of A minor. And what I'm going to do is use some very popular chord movements found in the minor key. And these are going to include the minor root, of course, along with the 6th and 7th chords. That's the F and the G in this particular key. It's a very common movement moving across the 6th and the 7th. It really pulls you around back to the root again. And the other one is a minor 4 chord. Now in the key of A minor, the 4th chord is a D minor. So that's a really nice sound, very popular sound in this key. And I've arranged a chord progression using those chord types. And it's going to go like this. We'll have A minor in the first measure, moving down the neck into an F major chord. Then we're going to move up into that 4 chord, the D minor chord. And then we're going to drop down to pull it back to the top onto G major chord. So the whole progression goes like this. Root chord down to the 6, which is F major. Then up to that 4 minor chord, which is D minor. Then down to the flat 7 major, which is a G major chord, pulling us back to the A minor root chord once again. So here it is one more time. Now that's a very popular set of changes, and you can go and move that into other keys. You can map it out in other locations across the guitar neck, practice your rhythm guitar and your knowledge of chords. All this kind of work is super important. It builds your ear. It builds a ability to predict how the sound is going to map from one chord to the next. Plus, it will build your musical memory, and that's very important. Your ears will latch on to things very quickly after a while, so they'll sort of get programmed into your mental tape recorder, and then over that, sort of your conscious mind will be starting to focus on how you're going to develop your improvisational skills. All that stuff, coupled with the good knowledge of the scales, the ability to do all those phrasing devices like the bending, slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, all that stuff, as well as other knowledge that you're going to gain along the way when you learn other players' guitar solos and leads, licks, melodies. All that stuff comes together to really build your whole set of skills to do improvisation. And what I'm going to do next is come back in a moment. I have this chord progression that I just played in the loop pedal, and I'm just going to improvise over it a little bit using all the scale patterns that we discussed, plus probably a few other things in there. Well, it probably goes without saying this, but getting really good at playing guitar solos takes quite a bit of time and effort. In the early days, simple pentatonic scale ideas are generally applied. Then, as players are going into more phrasing and technique concepts, we're going to see improvement happening again. And then a lot of times players will begin branching out into new scale tones for resolutions, such as extensions or maybe even suspended tones. Later, things will progress even further to include modes, the use of arpeggios, even diminished ideas to cover some of the jazz concepts. It's a lot of work, takes quite a long time. There's a lot of memorization of these ideas involved, and then combining them with, of course, the knowledge you need to gain over the years of chord applications. And all of it has to be done with a necessary constant improvement in your technique. But if you keep at it, as time passes, you improve your skills, and since the whole process is actually a lot of fun, it really doesn't seem like you're doing a lot of work along the way when you're practicing all this stuff. Anyhow, that's about all the time that I have for today. As always, I want to say thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week. Please subscribe to the channel, and please consider a possible donation to help the Guitar Lessons project here. Every little bit helps. Otherwise, have yourself a really great week, and I will catch up with you next time. Bye for now. I'd like to take a moment to mention another guitar video lesson project I've started. It's a unique guitar lesson approach that I'm doing online, and it's not like anything I've done before. Best of all, it's 100% free. I've called this approach Guitar Micro Lessons, and they're a great way to learn a few new licks or riffs or chord shapes each week. Now, these Guitar Micro Lessons are quick and easy to learn from. They're very short, with each lesson running between only 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes in length. They're published to YouTube from Monday to Thursday on my other Guitar Blog Update YouTube channel, and you can either subscribe to that channel to guarantee getting each new episode, or just visit the channel whenever it's convenient for you and check out the new micro lessons in the playlist on the Guitar Blog Update channel's homepage. If you'd like to learn the modes and really get an understanding how they can be used musically to write songs, play a solo, or compose melody lines, then you're in luck. My ebook, Using the Major Scale Modes, is a comprehensive manuscript outlining exactly how modes are used both in harmony and to compose melodic ideas. Over 50 pages of scale patterns, example progressions, and music theory all create one of the most comprehensive methods on the modes available. Using the Major Scale Modes is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com.